Hi, welcome back once again to Jack's Tech Corner. This video, as I'm sure the title has already given it away to you, is talking about controlling aperture and depth of field. We know that aperture is directly related to either a shallow depth of field, which means you're blowing the background out, or it can mean a more wider depth of field. In other words, you have everybody in focus, which is very important if you're shooting a wedding. Today we're going to be using my handy dandy Nikon D600. And one of my favorite lenses, carrying around lenses all the time, is this 50mm f1.8. It's a great little lens, very inexpensive, about 150 bucks, so it won't break your pocketbook or your wallet, and that's very important. So first let me tell you, the f1.8 of the 50mm gives us that shallow depth of field just by nature. That's why when you're going to get into wedding photography, or you're getting into senior portraits, or any kind of portrait photography, spend the money for lenses, okay? Buy the gear you need. I tell you that so much on these shows, because we can't go out there with a kit lens, and I'm sure a lot of you do it, and I don't mean to be picking on anybody, and I probably even started that way. But when you have a kit lens, it's very hard to do a lot of that advanced photography stuff. Not impossible, just more difficult. When you have a nice, good lens, it's good for low light. That's why I bought this 50mm originally, was to shoot our kids as they played basketball in the gymnasium, which is very poorly lit. I didn't really buy it for shallow depth of field. I bought it just for the lighting conditions. Also, that's why people buy the f2.8 lenses. Not always, part for shallow depth of field, but part to allow more light to get into the lens. Now we know that we can control light coming into the lens, into the sensor, by ISO also, right? You can raise your ISO up to 1200, and when you raise it to 1200, you're going to get very, very or better lit, I should say, better lit photos. But today we're not talking about that. Today we're just simply talking about shallow depth of field. I'm going to take you through a series of taking some pictures here. I came outside because I wanted to get some nature shots, because so many of you say, Jack, why don't you get enough film outside? Everything you do is in a studio. It's controlled. It's very easy to do it in the studio. When you come out and bring camcorders and cameras and cables outside, it gets a little bit more difficult, but I'm willing to do that for you guys. To get shallow depth of field, you would start with an aperture, the lowest aperture your lens will go, and get close to the subject. The closer you get, you can focus them and blow out the back. That's a shallow depth of field. A wider depth of field is when you stand back and you get everybody in focus. And we're going to talk about both of those through these series of pictures, and I'll tell you how each one of those work. And I'm going to show you examples of me taking these pictures. So it's very important and critical for you to watch those, so you'll know where I'm at, where I'm standing, and I'm going to relate all that back to you and tell you how those shots are actually taken. You can do this with a kit lens. With the kit lens, and remember, a variable lens is what normally comes with the kit. And variable means as you turn the tube, as you zoom in and out with your lens, it normally goes from 3.5 to 5.6 because they're inexpensive for the lens makers to make. That's why they make those lenses. And that's normally why they come with your camera. It's called a kit lens. They do work, folks. If you're shooting at a 3.5 or you're zooming out to a 5.6, the trick is, remember, get tighter to your subject. If you get tighter to the subject, you're going to just inadvertently blow out the background. That does happen if you're shooting on the lowest aperture possible. Now, to use that same lens, the one lens, let me back up here for 1 second. The one lens I really like to use a lot when I first started out was my 70 by 300mm Nikon lens. It cost you about 150 bucks, maybe 200 today, but it's a really great lens to shoot this stuff with. Plus it has a switch on the side for macro shooting. And we're not talking about macros today, maybe we'll get into that in another video. But what it allows you to do is you can turn that tube all the way out and step back, and you can blow the background out just like any shallow depth of field. It's pretty amazing. Okay, folks, so we're going to go ahead, get the camera started. I'm going to turn this camera around on some foliage here, I guess it is. I'm not a forestry major of any kind, but some foliage, and we're going to take some pictures. And then I got a little special subject we're going to take pictures of, and I'll explain that to you here in just a little bit. Let's get started. Okay, so now that we're here with our first subject here, there's this little blade of grass here with these little things on top of it. I don't really know the technical terminology of it. I'm by no means into forestry or anything. So I'm going to take a picture of this And what we're going to do is we're going to blow the background out. Now, as I said earlier, the easiest way to do this is set your camera to the lowest possible aperture, which on this lens it's 1.8. So we're going to get close up and tight with it. We're on aperture priority mode, and we're going to start with an ISO of 400. Now, why am I using an ISO 400 on a sunny day? Well, it's not really as sunny as you might think it is here with the light coming on the side of my head. It's overcast day. The woods is kind of gloomy and dark, so we're going to give the sensor a little bit more light to work with. So let's go ahead and take this first shot. And here's that shot now. You can see right there that the background is really blown out, right? And all I did was I got close to the subject. I got an f1.8 lens. The aperture set at f1.8, and it allowed me to get that shallow depth of field. Now, what happens if we want a wider depth of field? We want more things in focus. You're shooting a group photo. Don't ever shoot a group photo on f1.8 or f2.8 at that matter, because you're going to get whoever you're focusing on is going to be really in focus and the rest of the group is not. That happens a lot. I get a lot of questions on my YouTube videos about, Jack, why can't I focus on a large group? That would be why, because you're trying to get too tight on the main subject like a wedding party and you're not getting the rest of the group. So now we're going to go ahead and take this aperture and we're going to jump it up to 5.6, f5.6. And I'm going to take the ISO setting up to 800. Now you might be saying, Jack, why would you do that? That doesn't make much sense. The reason we do that is because as we're closing that aperture down, right, you're getting it's kind of, everything's in reverse on the camera, right? But as we're closing the aperture down, what you're getting though is you're decreasing the overall light. When we decrease the light, we have to compensate that somehow, so we increase the ISO of our camera, and that will allow us to compensate for this dense forest behind me. So we're going to move back up here. I'm going to move back a little bit more away from the subject and try to get more into focus, more area and focus behind it. All right, now with this shot, you can see that we are starting to pull more of the area in behind and on the sides of it more into focus. And all we did was took our aperture and we drilled down the aperture. Okay, we turned it down. You're raising the number, which decreases the size of the aperture, which gains more focus. And I know this is all kind of, it does get really confusing really quickly. But as we decrease the aperture size, we decrease the overall light that we have available to our camera. We're going to go now, I'm going to go right up to f22. And I'm going to stand back and capture this photo again. Now, with this photo right here, you can see now that we've captured even more of the background in focus. We actually pulled more of that background out. And remember, if you get to f22, bump that ISO up if it's kind of dark or overcast. Even if you're outside, look around, see what the lighting's like. If you have a beautiful sunlit day and there's no clouds, it's not overcast, maybe you can shoot this at ISO 100. But if not, get up there around 800. It's not going to hurt anything. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our next subject, which is that ear of corn. I didn't tell you about the ear of corn, did I? Anyway, when you live in the country, sometimes you do some things interesting, and we try to bring the deer out of the woods. So occasionally we'll hang ears of corn up just to feed them. We don't harm the deer, and just to give them some nourishment and some food, and we just want to see how long it will stay there. So anyway, the ear of corn lasted overnight, so I'm going to use it now as a subject for some more photos. So let's go ahead and take some pictures of that to show you more depth of field and teach you more about aperture. Let's get moving. Okay, now as I told you, I wasn't kidding. We do have an ear corn hanging on a post. Again, we're about 5 feet from the woods. Gives the deer a chance to come up and eat that corn. But we're going to use it now for a couple shots. So let's go ahead and get a shot with the f1.8. So we'll take this down. And now looking at my light, I'm more outside the trees here. So I'm more outside the trees. I'm going to take my ISO and I'll drop it back down to maybe 400. You could maybe even go 200. But you know, when you're getting ISO settings from 2 to 4, not that much variation. Let's go ahead and take a shot at this and check this out. Okay, now you can see in this shot, obviously we blew the background out. Now it's all gone, right? And the corn is very much in focus. We got tight, we got with our f1.8, we're tight on the subject, and we took the shot blowing the background out. Now, let's go ahead and increase this aperture. We'll go back up like we did before to 5.6 and we'll take this shot. I'm going to move back from the subject a little bit. And now you can see in this shot, you can see that we're starting to pull more of this shed in behind the corn here. Now we're going to go all the way up to f22. And when I do this, I am going to increase my ISO back up to 800 just to make sure. Why not? Why do I want to slow that shutter speed down where it's going to give me a blurry picture anyway, or camera shake? I want to make sure I have enough light available. So let's go ahead and take this shot. And there you can simply see that you have much more of the background in focus, and that's the way it's going to work for you if you're shooting at f22. So if you're shooting at large group, try a 5.6. You know, try 5.6. I like f11 a lot of times for group shots. F14, and then you go up to that f22. But remember, as you go to f22, again, as you're closing your aperture down, you're decreasing your overall light. So if you're in a church shooting a wedding party, get those ISOs up. I went to a wedding recently and everything was done with flash. Flash, flash, flash. Take the flash off the camera and shoot the picture. Use your ISO settings. Get your ISO up. They're more pleasing. There's people with glasses in these pictures that got nothing but spots in their eyes, and it's absolutely horrible. It's very unprofessional, and you shouldn't shoot that way. Okay, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Jack's Tech Corner. Hopefully you will click the like button, you'll like this video, or follow the channel, subscribe to my videos. I do appreciate that. And I will be bringing you more Photoshop and photography videos like this very soon. Also, if you would, please check out my website, jtclearning.com, where you can learn Photoshop Elements 12 right now. That lessons are up and you can sign up for those today. Also, if you go to jackstechcorner.com, don't forget to use my Amazon link. It surely helps out making these videos and buying camera gear, buying these microphones, whatever else I need to buy to put these videos out there. It doesn't cost you any more than Amazon. All it is simply a link. You click on it and then do your Amazon shopping as normal. Not just camera gear, cameras, diapers, cleaning products, pool products, car products, whatever you buy. Use my Amazon link. You can find it at jackstechcorner.com. Folks, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, keep those shutters clicking, and keep your editors editing. I'll see you back here very soon on Jack's Tech Corner. Bye for now.